in what is likely the biggest leak in gaming ever, thanks to what originally a lot of people thought was the FTC, but it's actually now coming out that it might have been Microsoft themselves. A massive portion of Xbox's first-party plans heading all the way until about 2030 have been released, completely unredacted, and this includes mid-gen console updates, new controllers, next-gen systems, and almost all of Bethesda's upcoming projects that we will be diving into today. And I will be trying to predict my full timeline of upcoming Bethesda releases all the way until roughly 2028. How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and while I normally refrain from covering leaks here on my channel, this one, it's honestly just quite too large to ignore, especially as it pertains to the lineup of Bethesda titles that are coming within the next several years. And this includes projects coming from Tango Gameworks, Machine Games, Bethesda Game Studios, Arcane Leon, and of course, id Software. Before hopping into the game specifically, I did want to at least touch on all the bases, starting with some of the reveals as far as hardware goes, and you can use chapters to skip around the video. Starting off with a mid-generation console refresh that Xbox is planning, as well as new controllers that sound like a pretty big upgrade from the current series controllers. The console itself, there's two. One is codenamed Brooklyn, and aside from the very clear cylindrical shape and the much smaller size compared to the current systems available, it also features a 2TB hard drive, improved Bluetooth and Wi-Fi functionality, and it's also more eco-friendly than the current systems, which is always a good thing. A second version, codenamed Elwood, is planned to release slightly before Brooklyn, and this seems like a Series S refresh. It has 1TB of storage and likely some similar upgrades that will be announced and released in 2024. Just as an FYI, Microsoft's fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th, so it can get a bit confusing when they're saying fiscal year 23, but they're referring to sometime in the middle of 2024. Just do keep that in mind with any of these dates. In addition to the brand new systems, a new Xbox controller codenamed Sabile is releasing at a price point of $70 sometime in the middle of 2024, and it's bringing to the table many of the functions the current PlayStation DualSense controllers offer, which I'm glad that Microsoft and Xbox are doing this. It's things like haptic feedback, the gyro support. If you don't know what that is, you can turn the controller around to interact a little bit differently with some games, and it has controller speakers, but there's also better wireless connection, quieter buttons, which thankfully they're doing this so I don't have the clicky clacking every single time I push anything on my controller. And then there's also rechargeable, swappable batteries, which is just an improved convenience for a lot of people. All of these improvements, depending on the quality of the haptic feedback, especially that's being incorporated into the controller, I do hope they spend quite a lot of time there. That is one of the main reasons I really appreciate the PS5 DualSense, and I actually prefer that controller. I like the haptics. It's a bit of a gimmick, but I like it. And then finally, exciting for a lot of people is the time window for the next generation worth of consoles. So a new Xbox console itself is planned to release sometime in 2028, and Microsoft is going full in on cloud services, which we've known this for a time, and I'll leave a link in the description to an article that covers the specifics of the new console a bit more in depth than I will here. But it is important to understand Microsoft's strategy from a while ago now has always been getting people to join in on the Xbox ecosystem. They've always had and have always touted this play anywhere mentality, and with the next generation of consoles, it seems that Microsoft is doubling down on that even further. No matter what platform you choose to play on or what medium you want to experience Xbox games on, if Xbox Game Pass is there, Xbox and Microsoft want you to be able to play your games on.
For an Xbox customer, the thing I want you to know is this is about delivering great exclusive games for you that ship on platforms where Game Pass exists. And that's our goal. That's why we're doing this. That's the root of this partnership that we're building.
So that's a brief overview and some light highlights as to the consoles and the hardware that are coming down the line for Xbox. Now for the part that I'm the most excited about, and that's the Bethesda lineup of titles. Now, some of these games we do already know about, some others are new and quite frankly unexpected, at least for me, and others fans have been waiting for a long time. Now, the first thing you'll notice is going to be the dates, and Obviously, with Starfield in particular, you can notice they're already out of date. Things like Starfield, which were initially expected to launch in 2021, are still put there. This document was apparently made in 2020 or in 2021, so nothing here is absolutely certain. It wasn't certain before, it's extra not certain now, but we do have a rough timeline as to when certain projects will fall within relation to one another, and of course, the list of games that are here. If we use Starfield as a bit of an estimate, you'll notice that it was pushed back roughly 2 fiscal years on this calendar based on this sheet, and at the end of this video, I will be showing a full prediction calendar, which is probably not at all accurate, but it can be fun, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. Starting off, there's the Indiana Jones game coming from Machine Games, and we know that Todd Howard is working very closely with this. It's one of his favorite IPs in existence, and although it's already announced, it has been 2 years since we've last seen or heard anything from Indiana Jones, and at that time, it was just a small little teaser that really gave very little away. I do think this year there's an opportunity to get a little bit more on Indiana Jones at the Game Awards, a trailer of some kind, and a full reveal coming during Summer Games Fest of 2024. There's also confirmation of 2 highly anticipated remakes, which I imagine is what most of you guys are probably excited for. Players have been asking for either of them for years: Oblivion and Fallout 3. Oblivion Remastered originally was leaked about a month or 2 ago, which I did cover. You can check out that video if you are interested, but the original leak stated that Virtuous Games, a third-party studio, were working on the remaster and that it was coming in either late 2024 or early 2025. Now, the Fallout remaster, it's coming a lot later, you can see, than the Oblivion remaster, but this does make sense given Bethesda and Microsoft would want to space out releases, so fans of both franchises get just a little something, and emphasis air quotes around a little, to hold them over until the next mainline entry in their respective franchises. Definitely a future conversation to be had about how these remasters are going to be handled. You look at a game like Oblivion, and while it is truly unequivocally my favorite Bethesda game of all time, a remaster, if it's just a tried and true one, I honestly don't think is enough to bring it into the current generation. Although according to those earlier rumors, it is set to be remastered using Unreal Engine 5, which means that changes to things like the combat probably need to be implemented in order to make it feel a lot more impactful. But for a pure and unapologetic remaster with some enhanced graphics, you have to keep in mind the dungeons in Oblivion, they're all the same. The combat feels like you're swinging around a pool noodle, and the world is ultimately, I'm just gonna be honest, it's mostly procedurally generated boring. And again, I cannot express how much I just love Oblivion, warts and all, but it is dated, and it's going to need a bit more than some shinier graphics to get me truly thrilled about the remaster, especially with something like Skyblivion, which to this day blows me out of the water that a project like this is being done by just volunteers alone, and that is a full-on remake of Oblivion. There's also the first Starfield DLC. We already know about this. It's called Shattered Space. It's part of the premium version of Starfield, if you got that, the $100 US dollar release of Starfield, and it's the first major story expansion, presumably story expansion, for Starfield. This was originally slated for fiscal year 2022, which meant it was roughly going to be a year after Starfield released. If you look at Fallout 4, the first major expansion in the form of Far Harbor, there were some others that came earlier, but Far Harbor, the first major expansion, released in May of 2016. That was just 6 months after Fallout 4 had released. So, using our napkin math, about the same time frame does make sense for Starfield's first major DLC. There's also codename Project Platinum that's referenced. At first, I thought this might be an expansion for Starfield, a second expansion, but later on, there's Project Kestral that's explicitly labeled as an expansion, so I wonder if Platinum might be the ZeniMax Online project that's seemingly been in the works for quite some time now. Platinum would make sense for Starfield considering the element name, Starfield's mineral gathering, and of course, all of the crafting that you need that stuff for, which is a massive part of any MMO, but maybe that's grasping at straws here. Could also possibly be an entirely separate project that we don't know about, because I'm sure there's some unannounced things that are on this list. As for Kestral, I'm a bit torn. Project Kestral could possibly be Indiana Jones DLC, assuming that game has been out for some time by this point. It could be Starfield's second expansion. It could also potentially, one thought that did cross my mind, be a complete rework of Redfall, since that game has gone more or less completely silent since its release. I say rework a bit optimistically. I want Redfall to get the attention I know and feel that it deserves. I don't know if that'll be the case. We do know that there are character expansions that were promised for Redfall. It's possible that a second studio, a third-party studio, is working on some of that in order to just get it out the door for players as Arcane Austin moves on to their next project, crossing my fingers for Prey. Lastly, a couple of major surprises for me, starting with the new upcoming Doom game from id, Doom 0 Year. I had thought for sure that id was going to be working on a new project, but it seems that a follow-up to Doom Eternal is coming, and as a massive lover of the new Doom reboots, I'm incredibly excited. The big question on my mind personally is whether or not Mick Gordon, who did the Doom soundtrack, is going to return. After a bit of a tumultuous relationship during Doom Eternal's development, I wouldn't be surprised if a new composer is set to take on the challenge of living up to what is just realistically a legendary soundtrack. I honestly thought that id was going to try their hands at a brand new IP, but I'm so glad that Doom is still getting love and another entry to the franchise, especially because it's been a while since Doom Eternal concluded with its final DLC. So let me know, would you rather see a new Doom game, or would you want something new coming from that studio? I'm curious of all your thoughts. Ghostwire 2 as well is another big one that's a surprise. I have my thoughts on Ghostwire. I was honestly hoping for an Evil Within, especially since that franchise has been dormant since 2017, and there was that small Easter egg tease in Hi-Fi Rush that said Tango or a studio was working on a beloved horror game. Many people thought that that meant Evil Within 3, but apparently not just yet. And from Arcane Leon, the much coveted, highly desired, and massively anticipated from Arcane fans, Dishonored 3. Redfall was developed by Arcane Austin, Dishonored 3 by Leon. Now that we know that Dishonored and Deathloop canonically share the same universe, I do wonder how that might play into the upcoming sequel. Of course, there's very strong identity that comes from the Dishonored series with the setting, the architecture, the types of weapons, so the futuristic and modernized version of the universe probably isn't going to happen for Dishonored, but either way, a lot of fans are probably going to look forward to returning to that hardcore immersive sim stealth experience that the Dishonored games are known for. It's going to be a welcome reprieve for many Arcane fans who did not like the action-oriented approach of Deathloop and the lack of variety and exploration in the way you could approach things that was present in Redfall. Especially after Redfall, I could imagine that team morale might be a little bit low, so going back into a beloved and familiar universe, I think is a great move for Arcane. I'm excited for the excitement I know is coming when it does finally get fully revealed. So with all of this information, I have tried to create a rough timeline of when we could expect many of these games. Please understand, not only am I aware of this fact, but I am probably horribly inaccurate on most of these predictions. This is entirely for fun and just to speculate on, but nobody can really predict these things, especially with the nature of the games industry, how often titles do get delayed, cannot be predicted perfectly correct without insider information, of which I have none. So this is purely for fun, but my general prediction calendar, I tried to be as specific as possible. No guessing windows, only the exact months. I also tried to account for known upcoming projects like Fable, Avowed, Hellblade 2, since those are massive releases that will impact the calendar and how Microsoft is going to space out upcoming projects. And I've also left some notes on there as well. As an addendum to the horrible inaccuracy that's probably going to be present, every time I look at this, I do move things around, so I'm not even 100% sold on the current version that you guys are seeing. But I will leave a link to this document down in the description below. Check it out. You can make a copy of it and then add in your own tweaks, takes, whatever you think, make changes to it. And if you feel so inclined, share whatever revisions you might make with me on Twitter. The link is in the description below. Before closing out this video, we do need to acknowledge the elephant in the room, and that is the sheer nature of these leaks in general. When developers have been working for years of their lives on many of these games, the nature that they exist to be pulled out, the possible reveal and the excitement that those reveals would generate to be ripped out from underneath them, absolutely sucks. But I want to end on a bit of a positive note, and the positive note is that while we might know what is coming, and we might know roughly when these games are coming, we do not know how these games will be revealed. Now that many of these projects are out in the open, I'm almost more looking forward to the announcements of them when that full reveal does happen and how it's handled. It would be cool if a lot of these projects, now that they are out in the open, remain quiet until they get closer to their release dates, similar to what Bethesda traditionally likes to do with their games. And when they do finally get revealed, it can be done in a glorious, no hold back type of manner with the full gameplay reveal, no teasers, no CGI, follow-up interviews to come after them, and it would get fans very hyped for these releases that could potentially be right around the corner if done right. Myself, and I know many other gamers would agree, the true excitement comes from seeing the game itself, not just hearing that it exists. And so developers who are probably feeling a bit discouraged, and that's probably an understatement for a lot of them, I hope that you don't let it get to you. There's still so much for us to be excited about. There's still so much that you can do to surprise us, and we are massively looking forward to seeing these projects in action, much more than just hearing that they're being worked on. If anything, in a weird way, it gets us more excited for a lot of these upcoming projects, so hope you take that as well as you possibly can. A massive amount of new information. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.